Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Side Hustles and Stuff podcast, episode 8. My name is Yuri, and I'm joined by Keishi.
How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. I have my black tea. What are you drinking today?
Today I've got Coke Orange Vanilla. I don't drink soda much these days, but I saw it on the shelf in the supermarket, and I had to try it.
Wait.
And then I just have plain water.
Say that again? Coke Orange Vanilla?
Yeah.
Coke Orange Vanilla.
It's surprisingly good, actually.
Okay. It's like 3 different things in one: Coke, Orange, and Vanilla.
Yeah, it was worth buying it and trying it.
That's the one thing I love about Japanese snacks and drinks. There's always something new and crazy to try.
Yeah, I know, but the thing that I hate is that it's always like a limited edition. And in Japan, when they mean limited edition, they do mean limited edition. And once the time to cut the product comes, it just gets off the shelves and nobody ever sees it again, even if it was like the most popular thing ever. And I'm always sad when things that I liked but that were limited time only disappear.
It's like sakura or what are they called? Cicadas. They're only around for a limited amount of time, then they're gone.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are we talking about today?
So I think today we're talking about how to get people to care about your side hustle, right? And I think we'll be covering it from a bunch of different angles.
Yeah. And getting people to care is probably one of the most important parts of having a side hustle, whether you're just starting, you want to start, or you are in the midst of doing your own project. Don't you think, Keishi?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, unless you have people care about whatever it is that you're doing, then what's the point? Especially if you're doing it as a business and not as a hobby.
Yeah, because as a business, you need customers. Customers are the people that essentially would buy your products. The money that you get, you use that to pay your bills and continue growing the business. Or it could be advice, it could be mentorship, it could be someone to bounce ideas off of. But at the same time, it's very hard to make people care.
Yeah, and I think just to take a step back, I think a lot of people, when they think about an online business like a blog or like a YouTube channel or like a podcast, but especially blog and things like that, where you're kind of hiding behind the screen, I think a lot of people think that there's no other people involved. And I think you can definitely do the thing as kind of a lone wolf and just do it yourself and never talk to anyone and never get out of your den and just build the blog and succeed. You can probably do that, but I think if you interact with people along the way, whether it's with your readers or whether it's with your friends that might be doing similar things, or whether just reading stuff on the internet that was written by other people and interacting with them in that way, I think it can kind of speed up your process.
Yeah. And not just blogs, if we think about other media like YouTube or podcasts like ours. So business relies on customers and media relies on viewers, readers, fans, subscribers, and much more. And the more you have, the more essentially scale you can have. If you have a $10 product and you have one customer, that's, essentially $10 to you. If you have that same $10 product and you have 100 customers, that's $100 now. So
yeah, exactly. The more that people care about you or your products, the more successful your side hustle is going to be.
But caring is the $1 million question, and it's not an easy topic to address because this is why entire marketing departments exist in every single company on the planet Earth. It's very hard to make people care, which is why we're going to address it today. So, Keishi, I think since we're talking about this from a side hustle perspective, we're not really going to be talking about, corporate marketing departments who are looking to make people care, but we're more so talking about the people that want to start a side hustle, or they already have one going, but they want to have more eyeballs on their work.
Yeah, I think so. And I think largely we will be talking about content businesses, but I think what we will be talking about applies to a lot of different types of businesses as well.
Yeah. So for a fresh side hustler, what's a fresh side hustler to do? Let's say they start a blog, they start a vlog, a YouTube channel, and how do they build up their audience? This is just my opinion. We all tend to look at our network, our friends, family, our social network, see who we have friends there, and we'll promote their stuff. Kind of like we do with the podcast, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good starting point because, one, you can get some feedback, although if you send it to your mom, probably she'll just say, oh, how amazing it is without giving any critique.
I love
but if you send it to your wider circle of friends and acquaintances, I think it can be a great starting point Because the thing is, usually if you build the first version of something, and I think it's the same with some of our podcast episodes, and we still have a long way to go. And I think if we look at blogs that we're building and things like that, the beginnings are usually rough, and the product that you put out in the beginning is usually good enough, but there's probably a lot of ways that it can be easily improved by a long way. And I think that's where just having your friends or having people be your first customers, be your first viewers, subscribers, can be really helpful in getting that feedback, and also with getting comfortable with doing actually what it is that you're doing, knowing that somebody is listening, but also knowing that it's people that personally.
Yeah. So if you're a side hustler, if you're a new side hustler, definitely first post it out to your immediate network. But the big question is, and one that we also ask ourselves, is how to get your friends to care about your own side project or side hustle.
Yeah, well, so what do you exactly mean by how to get people to care?
Well, to care meaning they're subscribed, to put it bluntly. They're either subscribed, they're listening, maybe they're watching your YouTube videos and they've subscribed, maybe they're listening to your podcast and they've subscribed. Or in the case of a business, maybe they placed, that first order that will help you get off the ground. Or if you're a musician, they're coming to your live shows. If you're an artist, they probably follow your art Instagram page and maybe they bought a painting or a shirt of yours. So things like that.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question because I guess like to get your friends to listen for the first time, it's probably really easy. You just send them a link and they will listen. Yeah. But then again, I think the question then is how do you actually get them to stick? And then I think once you're talking about somebody sticking with what you're producing, there's really very, very little difference between having your friends care and having people that you have no idea who they are care. Because then it comes down to just what you're putting out. And I saw something. I saw a video about a lot of people are following African American artists and business owners and things like that on YouTube and on other platforms. It's kind of part of the Black Lives Matter movement right now, as I'm sure you know. And the interesting thing that I heard is that if somebody subscribes to, that's great. But then if somebody subscribes to and then they never listen to any of your podcasts or they never watch any of your videos, then actually in terms of the YouTube algorithm, that's probably bad for you because it seems like you have a lot of subscribers but very little engagement. So I think it's important to kind of not just care about getting somebody to care about what you're doing for the first time and then just stop there, but it's more about kind of, again, just going back to how do you get people to actually stay with what you're doing and keep following you.
I think the same applies with email. I know Gmail algorithm works in a similar fashion that if a lot of email subscribers engage with your email, then Gmail will probably open it up to everyone else. But if you have a lot of email subscribers on your list, but a lot of them are not engaging with your email, then it's more likely to go into the promotions tab or into junk because Gmail notices that here's a wide variety of people that aren't exactly engaging. But to go off of that, I'm of the opinion that you should definitely let your friends know what you're working on, but you should have no expectations. Because the way I see it is in the case of side projects and side hustles, no one will ever care about something as much as you care about your stuff. It's your baby, right? Yeah. So, if an artist friend is putting out art and they're wondering, all right, your friends have liked the first 5 pictures that you posted up, but they kind of fell off. It's in a way, it's understandable because, well, Keishi, like in marketing, we have this number one rule, not in marketing, but in copywriting that I use all the time. And the rule to keep in mind is when I'm writing copy is no one cares about you, they care about themselves. So when I write copy, I never say we, our, us, this is about us. We always say you. So to build off of that point, if you keep that kind of in mind, then, it's almost understandable that people are much more concerned with themselves and you can't really fault them for it. So I guess my point is like, you should definitely let your friends know, but don't expect much because, everyone has their own interests. Like in our case, we're doing a podcast about side hustles. I know some people are interested in side hustles. Many people are not. I know some people are interested in hearing how to start one, but maybe they won't start one. And then they'll catch some other interest and they're no longer interested in listening to a podcast about side
Yeah.
hustle. So you can't really place that on a human being because, we are, again, we all have our own interests and our own babies per se.
Yeah, and again, I think friends are a good place to start. But obviously, if you're creating a clothing line for runners, and you only have friends that hate running, then of course friends shouldn't be your first go-to audience, and or you shouldn't even expect them, or you shouldn't even care about having them care about what you're doing. So I think in the end it comes down to just matching what it is that you're doing and what it is that your friends are interested in, I guess. And I think it's always easier with content because you can kind of create content and create blog about dogs, and you send it to a person that doesn't care about dogs
Yeah.
but is your friend. Then I think
Yeah.
the easiest thing they can do is just click on it and kind of skim through it and close it and never look at the site again.
Yeah.
So I think the hurdle there is kind of low. Whereas if you're talking about like a physical product, like the running shoes, let's say again, then of course you have a much harder hurdle to clear if you're asking your friends for money in exchange for what it is that you're making. Because then there really needs to be a match between what is it that they want and what it is that you are offering.
You mentioned, sending a friend an article about, let's say you write an article about dogs and they're not really interested in dogs or learning about them, and they'll just skim through it and close it. I can sense that the more creative people will be a little bit put off or hurt that, that their friend does not support their view or vision. This is just, I'm thinking out loud right now.
Yeah, I think some people will be hurt, but if you're hurt by this, then I'm sorry, but just get your act together and either create what your friends want. If making your friend care about what you're doing is important to, or if you're smart, you're just gonna not care about the fact that your friends have different interests, and you're just gonna look for an audience that will actually be interested in the stuff that you're doing.
Yeah, and that's the latter part that you said. That's the point that I kind of want to drive because, again, we all have our own interests and we simply can't be, matched toe to toe, step by step with everything that our friends like. So to that extent, you shouldn't, worry too much that your friend skims through it. It's just a fact. Again, it's just a matter of life. You probably don't care about some things that they're interested in, and vice versa. I think it's very rare for interests to match up so well. Have you ever heard of the Lonely Island by any chance? It's a kind of a comedy music
No,
group.
what is that?
Well, if you have ever watched Saturday Night Live SNL, or if you know, like, I'm gonna keep it still kids friendly, but they put out some fun songs like something something in a box or I just had. Look it up. Basically, the Lonely Island is 3 people, including the more famous one is Andy Samberg. He's now on the show Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and then I think there's Yorma and Akiv. Basically, 3 guys that stuck quite a while. I think they've been friends. They started making comedy videos and they just stuck with it for quite a while. And I like to think of them as like one of the rare exception where, the friends' interests align so much in tandem that they're able to stick with it and go through with it.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because I think sometimes you just have a bunch of friends that go on to form like a music band together, like you were just mentioning, or like a business or something. And I think other times you have things happen the other way, where it's like people become business partners or people become customers of each other or something, and then the friendship develops from there. So I think people are kind of generally tend to find people with similar interests.
Yeah.
But then there's also, of course, the friends that don't have similar interests, but they're still friends because like you knew them for 20 years or something, and you enjoy hanging out with them. But then trying to force those to be interested in your dog blog is just doesn't make sense, right? Yeah. I mean, you can of course mention it and you can like chat about it and things like that, but being sad because they don't subscribe to you or whatever, that just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. So guys, if you are not getting much support from your friends, don't really worry too much about it. I'm sure they love you, but more importantly, if you do want to get that side hustle off the ground, you should probably surround yourself and attract a different kind of client base, because your friends aren't going to be the ones that help your side hustle grow unless they're very much into the dog blog where they want to make comedy videos and sing songs.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one case worth kind of separating out here, I think, is that is if your friends are telling you that what you're doing is insane or what you're doing is nuts or doesn't make sense or you shouldn't be doing this, do you think you should listen in that case? Or
It
like let's say I send my friend a link to my blog about dogs
Yeah.
to stay on the topic, and they say, "Oh, you're crazy. You're just wasting your time. You should stop this." Then what would be your advice to me? What should I do?
Well, in the case of dog blogs, because you can substitute dog blog for something else, and at that point you should probably stop it, like for something more terrible, right? In the case of dog blogs, it's like, I don't know. At that point, I would really weigh my own intentions and goals versus what they actually know and how knowledgeable they are in their own opinion. Because if they're just talking out of their to keep it kids friendly, if they're talking out of their butt, I don't know. But if you're doing something that's a little more heinous, like, I don't know, like you're selling drugs on a corner, then maybe you should probably listen to your friend.
Yeah, that's the ultimate side hustle. But yeah, I agree. I think that's absolutely right, and you should kind of be self-aware of whether what you're doing is one, of course, if it's good, but two, also if it's got any future in terms of what you're expecting from it. But I think on the flip side, you should probably also consider or think about um, the friend that is giving you this advice, not just from the expertise point of view, because I think there are a lot of people with expertise in a lot of spaces that still give bad advice. But I think more in terms of, are they an optimist, are they a pessimist, or are they a realist, or do they always play the devil's advocate, or are they always overly optimistic? Like if somebody that's always super optimistic comes to me and say what you're doing just doesn't make sense, stop, then I'm probably gonna stop for a while and think about what they were saying. Whereas if a guy that always just that's essentially a naysayer and that just comes to you and whatever idea you bring out just takes it down and stuff like that, then I'd probably just listen and then forget it like the next moment and just go on and hustle even further. So
Yeah, that's true. So I guess you have to surround yourself with the right people in a way. Would you say so?
yeah, absolutely. I think there's this saying that you're the average of the 5 people that you surround yourself with, or something along those lines. And I absolutely think that's true. I think there's also, I forgot which book I read it in, but there was like, if you show me a group of 10 people and one of them is a millionaire and the other ones are poor, then I can tell you who the next poor person is going to be. And like, if you show me a group with 9 millionaires and one poor person, then I can show you who the next millionaire is going to be. So yeah, I think who you surround yourself with, especially when it comes to business and things like this, I think is really important.
That's true. Okay. So let's move on to the next point. So how do you get people to care? So we just covered, how much friends should be involved, if any at all. And then they're kind of like the first step to getting your project off the ground. They can definitely help, but they're not going to be the people that will propel your side hustle to a larger scale.
Unless you're friends with Bill Gates or something.
Yeah. So I guess the next question is, how do you get people to care, and who should you target exactly if friends aren't going to be it?
Well, I think the nice thing about the internet is that you can essentially target whoever you want to target based on their interest, right? So if you're writing a site about dogs, then you should target people that love dogs or people that want to get a dog or things like that. Whereas in the past, it was very geographical. Now you can actually target people based on their interests. So I think that's the amazing thing about what we're doing. The audience is just so much greater.
Yeah.
But I think, like you said earlier, what was it, the saying that you had? Oh yeah, like I said earlier, no one cares about you; they care about themselves. I think that's true to a very large extent. I believe that most people are selfish, even if the selfishness expresses as being not selfish. At the very core, I think it's still just them enjoying the fact that they're not selfish. So that's like a whole another debate on the nature of human.
Yeah, let's not.
I guess, but yeah, assuming no one cares about you, they care about themselves, then the best way to get them to care about what you're doing is to help them with something that they care about, right? And I think in the case of, again, like I said, we'd be talking about content businesses. So whether it's podcast, whether it's YouTube, whether it's a blog, I think the number one way you can get somebody to care about you is to produce really, really, really good content
that they're interested in.
Exactly. Yeah. Especially if you're building a niche site or something and all you care about is people get to your site and click on your affiliate link and buy a product, then I think it's not as important. But if you're trying to build a brand that really is a brand, that's not just some website, then I think you really have to care about the quality of the content and things like that.
Yeah. So again, the rule that most copywriters or the good copywriters should keep in mind is no one cares about you, they care about themselves. And the whole point is in the case of advertising and marketing, there's already a lot of noise out there, right? So you're already as a marketer, you're already at a disadvantage because of how much competition there is. And on top of that, you're also competing with the internal monologue, thoughts, issues, worries, goals, dreams that the person already has inside their head. You know, for example, maybe they have back pain. Maybe they have relationship problems. Maybe they really want some ice cream right now. Maybe they want to go on a vacation. And here you are coming with that dog blog. So to that extent, it's almost understandable why, you know, the dog blog is not going to crack through their kind of, you could say, the force field around their brain. But if you suddenly write about ice cream and they want ice cream, now in a way you're kind of tapping the conversation or the interest that they already have internally, and they're more likely to listen.
Yeah, so I think that's absolutely correct. But one thing I'd note here is that I think on the internet, it's really easy to find people that care about a certain topic and be in touch with them, right? So it's easy to reach people that care about the same topic, right? So if you write a blog about dogs, then chances are that you're going to be reaching people that care about dogs easily, right? So to me, the bigger question is how do you get from the stage where you are reaching the right people to actually having the people that you are reaching care about your stuff? So it's kind of like the next stage. Because I think on the internet, you're very rarely going to have a case where you're writing a blog about dogs, but that the people you're reaching actually are people that love cats.
Right.
Unless, of course, you have like a YouTube channel about dogs with 20,000 subscribers, and then suddenly overnight you just switch to cats.
We need a case study on this.
Yeah, but if you're just starting to build your audience, then you can target your intended audience pretty well. So I think it's more about how do you get people to care about your dog content versus somebody else's dog content.
Yeah, but at the same time, you still have to crack through whatever else the person has on their mind, and you know, because there's a lot that's competing for a person's attention. But to go off on that last point, you know, let's say we're talking about dog blogs. I think we're jumping just ahead a little bit. All right, you decide on a niche, you start writing a site, but how do people actually reach you? I think is what someone new to this, a new side hustler, would be wondering. Like, all right, I have some articles and videos about dogs, but how do I get readers? How do you get people to care? How do you get them to find you? I think a prerequisite of all of this is that you should be first and foremost visible on whatever platform you're trying to use, whether it's Google search engine, meaning you have to do SEO, YouTube, meaning you have to optimize your videos and keywords so you can be found for certain search terms. So first and foremost, people, you should be able to be found, because if you're not found, then you're not going to exactly tap into anyone that wants to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you mentioned SEO, you mentioned Google there, right? And I think that's a really interesting case, because with Google, if you know a bit of SEO and if you target the right keywords and stuff like that, then it's really easy to get people to find you. And essentially the way people find you is that they look for solution to a problem that they have, right? So they care about themselves. It's not like they care about you. They care about themselves. They care about, like, should I take my dog on a walk once a day or twice a day? Let's say that's what I'm trying to figure out. Then I only care about myself and my dog, right? And I just happen to stumble upon your website. And I think that part is, again, we'd have to go into SEO and how to generate audience and things like that. But the other part of that is once somebody gets on your website, they're still looking just for the answer to their initial question in case of SEO, right? Mm-hmm. So if I search for should I take my dog for a walk once or twice a day, then that's the answer to the question that I expect to be able to read on the page that I click through. And I think that what really happens on that page then is what's really important, I think, which is, do the people just read the answer and do they leave? Or do the people just read the answer, but there's also something else that catches their attention, that then they essentially start caring about you as well, rather than just about the answer to the question that they had, right? So what do you think are some of the things that people can do to kind of take it to the next step once they have the first person on their website? Once somebody cared enough to click through to their website through Google, let's say, what can they do to then capture the attention and to be able to turn that person into their fan essentially.
Yeah, that's I guess the first and foremost thing is every piece of content needs a call to action. Whether it works or not, you still have to tell people do this or do that. Like how you will see in every YouTube video towards the end, they'll say, if you stuck around this long, be sure to hit that like, thumb, whatever it's called, like, comment, and subscribe.
The bell button.
Yeah, hit that bell button. The other thing is like, there's a lot of things you could do. You could include free offers, like, if it's a dog blog and they're there to find out how many times a day they should walk their dog, you could upsell them on a free PDF or an ebook on how to walk your dog. I don't know, or the best kind of walking routes for your dog, or I don't know, but something that matches the interest or the solution of whatever the person is searching for, and give it away for free. And I say free because free is probably one of the most important words in marketing. Free is what captures people's attention, makes them care. We all like free stuff.
Yeah, I was reading about a study that was done on this, and there's a huge difference in let's call it the conversion rate, but it was like a real life case study or real life like a university study sort of thing. So not necessarily related to this, but there was a huge difference between asking people to pay nothing and giving them stuff for free versus asking them to pay like 1 cent or 10 cents for, I think it was like a piece of chocolate or something.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the difference between asking people to pay like 10 cents and like 20 cents was almost non-existent. The difference between 0 and 10 or 0 and 1 and then 1 and 10 or something.
Yeah.
There was just a huge gap. And like the psychology around free is completely different than the psychology around even 1 cent whenever it is that people have to take out their credit card or take out their money or do something to get what they want.
Yeah. You'll notice it in a lot of places. For example, when I was getting my internet set up, or when I was shopping around, it said like 1 month free. I was like, all right, I'll take that, because it's just like, it makes it easy for the customer to say yes, if they're weighing their options. And usually I don't think people are doing it as logically as they are. Like, by what I mean is, no one puts on their thinking hat and starts dissecting it piece by piece. So when they hear the word free, it kind of lubricates them onto the next step. Like, yeah, I want that.
Yeah, I think so. And interestingly, actually, if I think about it, then even having to take out your credit card, if something's free, like a Netflix free trial or Amazon Prime free trial or whatever.
Yeah.
Like how many times people forget to cancel their subscriptions and then end up paying for years for something that they subscribed for as a free trial.
Yeah. Oh, it happens quite a lot.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this, then you should check your credit card statement every now and then and clean up your inactive subscriptions.
And don't sign up for free stuff. Well, you can.
Yeah, there's no such thing as free at the end of the day.
There's always something being upsold to you at the end of the day.
Yeah, but I think there is such a thing as receiving free value. But then it also comes down to how you control yourself rather than what just the person that's trying to sell you at the end of the day is offering you. So I think free trials are great. You can do a lot of stuff with free trials.
Yeah, you can give away a free book, a free video, a free podcast, a free call, a free T-shirt.
Yeah, or even just look at like how much of your blogging stuff have you learned from reading articles for free on the internet?
That's a good question. I wish I could track it. I guess I learned quite a bit. I mean, like there were times where I'd be looking up HTML or CSS code on how to change something up, or I'd be looking for SEO tips. And I think that's how I learned quite a lot of it based on free content per se. So yeah, those are quite valuable ultimately.
Yeah, for me, it's like 99.99% probably. If I disregard whatever I learned just by kind of trying stuff on my own and maybe like talking to you and similar people. But I guess one of the things that I want to say is I cared about the content at that point, right? So let's say I search for how to do keyword research and I care about that content, but doesn't mean I necessarily cared about the person.
Yeah.
Or there's blogs that I've been following for like years and years, yet I've never bought any of their stuff. So I think getting people to care is just the first step, and then you also got to get people to care enough to pay you. And I guess that for that you also need some sort of compelling offer.
Yeah. One thing you mentioned, either I think a little bit earlier, on faceless blogs, I think one thing that does help to make people care is not be a faceless blog and actually put yourself out there so people can, we instantly relate to other humans more so as we would relate with a randomblog.com where you can find free tips on how to get free stuff all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the bloggers that really get people to care are always the bloggers that are a face rather than just a brand. And you see this a lot in the internet marketing space, but you also see it in many other niches. Like you got mom blogs and you've got you got pet blogs, to stay on the topic. But by the way, we're not sponsored by the American Association of Dog Owners or anything, but we just happened to pick this example. But yeah, I think it's always the good, like one of the, I guess, easiest ways that you can kind of increase the chance that somebody will care about you is just being you.
Exactly.
Rather than being some brand.
And one other big benefit to that is, let's say you do build up an audience. That audience is there because of you. And let's say even if you build a blog around dogs and you have an audience that's interested in you, the character, now you kind of have an audience for when you try to do another project. Because they're, if someone's interested in your products and they buy from you, they'll probably be interested in what else you're doing.
That's a really interesting point, I think, because I see a lot of bloggers that are in different spaces. So that, let's say, mom bloggers and travel bloggers and dog bloggers, always starting around their own topic. But then there's a lot of them that also start talking about something else, or they start a section on the website about how to start a dog blog or how to start a blog in general, or about personal finance or something that's completely unrelated to what they're doing, but it's still general enough so that essentially their whole audience is potentially interested in it. And I think once you build a solid audience around one concept, then it's a great platform that you can leverage to create another thing in even completely unrelated things, as long as there's some sort of overlap, right? And I think that's the point where people really care about you rather than about just what you have to offer them.
Yeah,
kind of in the short term.
That's very true. So what else can our listeners do to get people to care? So we just talked about free offers, talked about value, like the content has to be valuable, whatever you're giving away. We talked about putting yourself out there and actually being a human rather than a faceless blog, like some of mine are.
Yeah, some of mine too. And again, I think it really depends on the business model as well, right? Like, do you care about people caring about you, or do you just want to give people the information they want, and do you just want to get some ad revenue in exchange for that? So I think it really depends on the business model.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the other thing is to kind of extend on the topic of you just got to be you is I think you got to be genuine, right? And there's probably some marketers that would completely disagree with this. And like I'm sure you saw those YouTube ads where it's like, oh, hey, I don't want to take a lot of your time, but please listen to me for 30 seconds and I'll teach you how to be rich. And it's like, yeah, sure, you don't want to take my time. All it is want to take my money.
Yeah.
Right. So I think those tactics might work in the short term, but in the long term, they will just expose you for what you are, which is either a con artist or a snake oil salesman or just selling stuff that people might want, but in a not really genuine way or in a not really nice way. And I think that's not good, especially if you're trying to stay for the long term.
Yeah.
Because sooner or later, your kind of true nature will pop out, right?
Yeah.
So really, I'd say just being genuine. Like, again, if you want to make $10,000 of an online course in a month and then never make any other money ever again, then probably like the way you see a lot of people do it on YouTube, where it's like, hey, I've done this and I can teach you that. And if I teach you this, then you'll make $10,000 in half a year, working 1 hour a week or something. You can probably do that, but in 2 years, nobody will know who you are or nobody will care. Right. Whereas if you're genuine, and I think it especially comes to like free offers, like how many companies are offering webinars and things like that, where it's essentially just a sales pitch.
Email providers do offer webinars of sorts on teaching you how to use features. But for the most part, webinars are kind of tied with, hey, come in for this free training. Whereas the free training is ultimately just an upsell to buy my product for $10, and then they upsell you on a bigger product, in the back end. Essentially, that's how most marketing works. It gets you in for cheap or free, and then upsells you on something bigger. The back end product is what it's called in marketing terms.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I'm not saying there's people that don't do this genuinely, but I'd say most of them are for most of them treat the webinar as a sales tool rather than as a tool to provide value, right? I'd say. But I think if you want to do it in the long term, then I think thinking of it as something that provides value, and then the sales are kind of a byproduct of that versus the other way around is the right way to go about it.
You've mentioned people being snake oil salesmen and charlatans. And I think one thing that will definitely help in terms of getting people to care is posting up evidence. I know you've sent me links before of people showing their income reports and how much they make from affiliate marketing and from their blog. And I think that kind of adds credential and evidence and kind of it's you being real and it's you being authentic, because if you're selling a here's how to blog course and you're showing your own earnings, you're being upfront. I think that will also definitely add to that will help people care.
Yeah, I absolutely think so. I think like if you're trying to teach people how to make money, then just some sort of proof of how you're making your money, or in any sort of business, essentially testimonials are big, right? And you also see like a lot of these featured in and like pen logos of major newspapers sort of thing. Like any proof of the fact that you are kind of recognized within the space, or that you know what you're talking about or what you're doing. I think that's always good to getting people to care about you, because again, if they care about themselves, then all they care about is to get somebody that knows the best about the problem that they're trying to solve, right? And just putting those sort of things in front of them will kind of help you do that.
Yeah. Here's another point. I want to know your take on it, but I think I've discussed this with you, and I've also discussed this with my friend who I mentioned last time started his own t-shirt and like sticker products. Basically, he turned comic book drawing and he used that to create his own products. And one thing we discussed was like, in the start or at the start, or actually for a while, no one really cares about you. And people only start caring when you start blowing up. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a good point too. I think putting the family and friends aside for a minute, because I think very few people have a network of friends and family large enough to sustain a business, which just by the nature of it means that for your business to be successful, you got to venture essentially out of your friends and family, out of your comfort zone. And when trying to build what was essentially a third-party audience like that, then I think it's hard to get the first few followers, and the more followers you get, the easier it gets. It's like a snowball effect, right?
Yes.
I think it compounds, because if nobody knows you, then the first person has to find you completely by themselves, right? But then there's people that will find you by themselves, but there's also the one person that can refer you to some other people. And then once you have 5 followers, then those can refer you to people, and also other people can find you. And it just kind of stacks on top of each other. So just the further you get along, the easier it kind of gets to grow.
Yeah.
I would say.
And I think another point to add to this is it is a sad reality. I wouldn't call it sad, but in some ways maybe it is. But it is the reality that no one will particularly care until you have a lot of work and a lot of talent to show. And that takes a while. I think that's the kind of like the 10-year trek, they say every overnight success is a 10-year process.
Exactly. I think that's a great point, actually. I think a lot of people don't care about people unless they're successful. There's a bias towards success, I think, in terms of people caring about what you're doing.
It's called survivorship bias, where people, it's how also successful people, or one-time successful people sell themselves, because basically you think like, oh, here's that one person that made it. But the bigger picture is that out of, that's that one person that made it out of like what, 1 million people that didn't make it. So the statistics aren't in their favor. It's just in some ways it could be luck. So in a way it's a bias, but go on.
Yeah, I see that a lot in like stock investing and things like that, where people are like, oh, if Warren Buffett can beat the market by 20% or whatever, then of course it's possible if I just do my research.
It's like saying, hey, 100 people jumped into the river and swam across a crocodile infested river, and here's this one guy that finally made it. We got to listen to him.
Yeah, this reminds me of an anecdote that I saw in one of the books that I was reading, and I think it was referring to something that Warren Buffett said. I'm not 100% sure about that, but essentially what he said was, if you took like 1 million monkeys and you had them do a coin flipping contest, then one of the monkeys would hit like tails 15 times in a row. And then what that monkey would do is she or he would go out and try to sell his services as the best coin flipper.
Yeah.
Because he was just the one out of the million that happened to be lucky enough to get the 15 tails in a row. So I think there's a lot of that in online marketing and things like that too, where a lot of people disregard all the steps that they took and all the potential outcomes that that could have had. And just kind of with the hindsight, they attribute all of their success to just taking those 10 steps or 11 steps.
Yeah. Well, just to underline this specific point, listeners, this is called survivorship bias, where you see that one successful example and you think they know what they're talking about, whereas you don't get the bigger picture of like a million other people that failed while they kind of succeeded for reasons that may have been outside of their control. Hence, it's a bias, and hence it's a fallacy.
Yeah, like if you think about it, like the guy that you mentioned that's been working hard for 10 years and happened to be successful at the end of the 10 years, like a 10-year overnight success. Like take another guy that was doing exactly the same thing, just happened to get a completely opposite result, which is perfectly possible, right? Not everybody can be Michael Jordan, even if they practice for like 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
Then there's still a lot that you could learn from that person because they took the same journey. I'm sure they had a lot of the same learnings along the way, but you will disregard that person just because they haven't reached the goalpost, even though they've done exactly the same process and they learned essentially exactly the same things along the way.
That's true. So to bring it back, how do you get people to care? Again, the sad reality is, whether sad or not, is that it takes a long time. Again, people only care when you're actually good at something and when you have something to show. This actually, I thought of I had an idea in my head because I write scripts and I've still not done the things that I've promised to do. And I was having a conversation with someone who has a studio, and like, it would be really cool if we could write and shoot a comedy. And he's like, yeah. And ultimately, if the person who has the studio agrees, ultimately it's still on you to pull in the work. So the fact is that you still have to put in the work. Hence, again, going back to that 10-year process, because the metaphorical 10-year process, you still have to put in the work. You still have to show up and get it done. At that point, people will start caring when you start getting serious and putting in tangible work in front of you.
Yeah.
One other thing I can comment on how to get people to care is having unfair advantage. And that being, you have a friend that's actually in a position to help you out. So in a case, like, for example, I have 2 Facebook pages, language related. I have one of them is not language related. It's called just Best Japan Pictures. And I wanted to see if I could grow that page. And I think it's like at 24K likes or 20K likes. And I used a friend's Facebook page who had a lot more likes than me to like kind of cross promote and give me the initial few fans. So one unfair way to grow is like, you should have a friend that is in a position to help.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to that's definitely a good way to grow our audience. And I wouldn't call it unfair. I think that's just smart.
The only reason I say it's unfair is whether it's unfair or not. Well, I guess some people would not have access to such a friend, you could say.
Yeah, but I think then it comes back to tie it back into how do you get people to care?
Yeah.
I think then it comes back to how do you get other people that already have a platform to care about what you have to say and to help you promote yourself? Is it you offer them an affiliate relationship on a great product that you have, or is it just interacting with them on Twitter and becoming friends and creating those friends, or like how do you get those people to care?
That's a good point. Actually, yeah. Well, one thing, for example, on the topic of Facebook pages, one thing I would think of would be like, hey, let's say someone has a 100K page, with 100K fans, and you have like 50 or I don't know, 100 or 1,000, and you still want to grow yours. One thing you can do would be like, hey, would you be able to promote my page? But since you're such a low hanging fruit in a way, they may not be interested in you. But if you offer something of value, be like, hey, I'll pay $25 or $30 or $100 if you promote my page. At that point, people will start listening. But that's just one example. Essentially, what you're doing there is you're giving them value.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you just go out and let's say I want to start a Facebook page and I want to get some followers, but then I go like, oh, I can't grow it as large as Yuri can because he had a friend that had 5,000 followers on his Facebook page already and he cross-promoted his page. So there's no way I can make a page as successful as Yuri's. Then I don't deserve to make a successful page because I'm just lazy and I'm just making excuses for why I couldn't reach the same thing. Now, I think there's some level where, like, of course, you can make a Facebook page or whatever it is that you're making as successful as Bill Gates could or as a president of a country could or something. But I think on kind of the if it's roughly on the same level, then I think just saying somebody has a friend and you don't is just an excuse.
Yeah, because you can find ways to offer people value, as in like, paying $25 or $100 for a quick shout out. Whether that works or not is another discussion.
Yeah, or not even paying. I mean, just make friends, make new friends on Twitter or wherever. It's like if you reach enough people, you're gonna get what you want.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I think that's what business is about.
Also, on the topic of getting, you could say, influential people to care, is we've talked about this before on another topic, but having that whole body of work already existing is when other people will start caring. If you come to them, say, hey, I have this great idea, would you be interested in doing it? Whereas like if you have like already a blog of like 1,000 articles on that topic and an established audience, and you come to them and say, hey, I have this idea, they're more likely to listen to you with that established body of work.
Exactly. And I think to take it back to what you were saying about it gets easier the further you get along because the more successful you are. Like imagine that you're trying to make a podcast that's just about interviewing entrepreneurs, right? It's like getting the first one is really hard, but then you can get somebody that's kind of a new entrepreneur or they're just kind of looking to be on a podcast because he enjoys talking about her. You get your first one, then you take the first one and you tell some other person, hey, I already interviewed you. Can I interview you as well? And then it's like a herd mentality in a way where they're more likely to say yes because they're not the first one, right?
Now, I've been talking about content, like, well, not so much content, but more so like blogging, for example. How about people that are doing art, whether it's music or images or trying to do movies? How would they be able to get people to care? What are your thoughts on that?
So we're talking like independent movies sort of thing?
Well, let's say you're an artist, you're drawing pictures, you're drawing comics, or you're producing music, you're a singer, or maybe you're making videos online, like an amateur filmmaker.
Here, I think there's two things. One is I think you just got to put things out because I think the first, like people care so much about people caring about them and about what people think about them that they just censor everything on their own level, right? So like, let's say I want to be a singer and I record like 100 songs, but then I only release one because I think the 99 others are just not good enough. But I think the reality is that if you put out 100 songs and 99 of them are crappy and one is good, chances are you don't know which one is good because everybody likes different things and what you think is your best work, others might not care about, whereas what you think is one of your not so good piece of work, other people actually love, right? So I think just by releasing 100 things rather than one, you have higher likelihood of somebody caring because you actually give them a choice essentially.
Yeah, and you have to consistently release.
Exactly. And the thing is, in 1 year, nobody will remember 99 songs that are bad, but everybody will remember that one that was really good. And that's all that matters, right?
Yeah, that's a very good point. If you put out a lot of piece of work, eventually the good ones kind of rise to the top. And then you could tell, which ones are the good ones, which were the bad ones.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think people always talk about quality versus quantity. Whereas I think in the world where like storage is abundant and you can essentially reach people a limited number of times, I think the concept of quality through quantity is really something to keep in mind, I think.
Yeah.
Because essentially the good stuff will filter itself out of the bad stuff just through the sheer community that you build rather than through your own judgment, right?
Yeah, just a side note, you must have, again, for people to care, you must have presence on channels like, I don't know, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat, YouTube, whatever it is. Before anything that's a prerequisite, you should be visible, you should be found. Otherwise, if you keep it locked on your computer and if it's not going out, then no one's ever going to see it. But as a prerequisite, just to stress this, you should be out there and you should be actively promoting.
Exactly. So one, just to recap, I think one is just quality through quantity. So just put out a lot of content and let the people decide what they like. Don't be like the publishing gatekeeper, the traditional publishing gatekeeper who's just looking at 1,000 proposals and picks just one. Instead, put out all 1,000 blog posts, put out all 1,000 books, and let the market decide. I think that's one. And two, I think with something like art, I think it's really important to build a community, right? So I think interacting on platforms like Twitter or Instagram and things like that, it's probably valuable. But again, I've never done this, so this is just what I think.
Yeah.
But I would think it's much more valuable for this sort of like artists to interact on Twitter with other artists, with people that are kind of part of the same culture, that he thinks could listen to his songs and things like that, compared to, let's say, like a niche set or something.
Yeah. Also, don't be afraid to take out an ad, because it's if you're not exactly reaching the people that you want to reach right now, then taking out a quick ad, putting out your best content there, and asking people to follow you is probably a better way of growing your audience if you're still looking for people to care.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I mean, money can always fast track things, and if you have some money to invest, then it's probably worth trying some ads and things like that.
If not, you can always follow the good old co-promotion model. You ask someone to promote you, in return you promote them. That's another tactic that you can do to build your audience.
Probably once you have at least some audience. But again, if you're just starting, I think that the other one, and maybe not the best one during coronavirus, but once this thing is over, just try to get as many lives as possible. And even if it's in like the worst bars or in the worst live houses or whatever, just get a lot of lives, just get as many of them as possible. Go out there and hustle, and just slowly kind of build it up from there. Because in the end, if you get a live even in front of like 15 people, that's 15 people that can tell about you to their friends.
Yeah. There's one thing that you mentioned earlier. I know I say this a lot, but I guess that's the power of having a discussion, is that you say something and that kind of ticks off another thing in my head. We were talking about authenticity and being the real you in terms of getting people to care. And I think that's incredibly powerful in art, because essentially good art kind of appeals to the emotional side of us. And that's something you can consider for your art. If you make it stand for something, if you could do some, this is hard to talk about, because this is at which point, not us, we can't tell you how to do it. It's up to you and how you present it. But all the good art, all the good products, art aside, all good products kind of speak to us on an emotional level, why we buy into them. For example, I'm a big fan of Gymshark. It's a fitness clothing brand. And because I go to the gym a lot, obviously I see myself as someone that goes to the gym a lot. So I kind of want to wear that stuff, and I like their designs. But it appeals to me somewhere deep down on an emotional level. And I think the same thing goes with music, same thing goes with the images that you produce, the music you produce, the movies, the short skits that you produce. It has to appeal on some sort of emotional level. How you do it, that's up to you. You're the artist. We can't tell you what to do.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think when you're starting out, and I think this is the case with pretty much anything. And I kind of had the same tendency with when starting my websites and things like that. But there's a tendency to try to please everyone. But I think you really got to pick your target, right? Because if you're singing love songs, then you clearly can be talking to people who are not interested in that at all.
Yeah.
Right. So I think in the beginning, especially, and probably the more you grow, the more this becomes the case. But I think you got to be, I don't think controversial is the right word, but I think you can be afraid of offending somebody, right? Of course, but
yeah, I wouldn't say it's the matter of offending someone. I think it's just a matter of choosing who to focus on. For example, take Facebook. Their first step was to target college users of everyone else. And you always want to start with a small target audience.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. They started at Harvard or something, right?
Yeah.
And I think that, yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think it kind of ties it all back into how do you get people to care. And I think probably one of the best ways to get somebody to care is to get their friend to care, right? And that's probably also sort of what happened with Harvard. And that's essentially the network effect in a way, right?
Yeah.
Like if I get your friend to care, then he will do the job of me having to get you to care about me for me. Like he'll get you to care rather than me having to make you care.
But the overlying concept here was that, you focus on a niche and you take advantage of that for now before you go on. Because, you're mentioning love songs earlier. If you're doing love songs, you probably won't attract anyone that's probably not into love songs. But at the same time, what you do develop with some luck is you develop a rabid fan base for love songs just by the nature of focusing on that one specific topic.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So anything else? Can you think of anything else of how do you get people to care?
So before that, I have one last question for you.
Go ahead.
Do people need to care for you to make your side hustle successful?
It's a good question. I guess it depends on what kind of line of business you're in. In my case, I do affiliate marketing with my blogs. That's how I monetize them. So if they visit the blog, then it means they're looking for a solution, and I provide the affiliate links. And if they like that solution enough, whatever language learning product, if they buy it, I earn a commission. So to that extent, I don't know how much care is involved there, because I'm not exactly tied to it. or like my personal brand is not tied to it. As long as they found it useful enough, but like, is that caring? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a good example, and I think it's a good question if that's caring or not. Because I just thought of like imagine like restaurants, and imagine a restaurant that's been in the middle of some city for like 100 years, and people go there because they love Mister whatever Oliver, and imagine a drive-through restaurant on like a highway that thousands of cars drive by every day, and it's largely the same cars, but there's also new cars. But at the end of the day, what everybody wants is just a hamburger, or essentially what everybody wants is just to get fed on their way from point A to point B, right? To me, that's sort of a business where
Yeah.
I don't think people really have to care about you, because one, the customers kind of come to you. It's a captive audience, I guess. Is that what you would call it essentially?
Yeah.
Right? Whereas if you're like the restaurant in the middle of the city center and you want to attract a lot of people to come to you repeatedly, and there's like 10 other restaurants around, then you really have to get people to care about you and to care about what you're doing. And in turn, you also have to be really good at what you're doing. You have to make the best food, or you have to be known for something.
I guess, yeah, it really depends on the line of business that you're in. But, I guess we also picked a very broad topic today because you still have to get someone to care somehow. Because if it's not your customers, then at one point you're going to have to impress investors or mentors, or maybe there's someone that you want to hire. But yeah, in that frame of view, it definitely kind of depends on the business itself.
Yeah, and I guess it really depends on also what you mean by care and things like that. So it's really hard to give any sort of definite answer. But I think it's just interesting to think about these things, and I'm sure
Yeah.
there's some valuable things.
Thinking about it from the side hustler's perspective, yeah, there are some side hustles that you could do that you don't need immediate friends or family to care about, like starting a dog blog. Ultimately, who you need for that is dog owners that are searching for solutions to their dog problems online is essentially who you should probably target, as opposed to if you're an artist and you want to, I don't know, promote your work. Let's say you're doing comic books, then you need to target comic lovers of some sort rather than your friends, unless you have a few friends that are into comics as well. So even in the case of side hustles, it also depends. But I think there are only two people in life that will definitely care about your side hustle more than you, or probably at the same level as you, and that's probably your mom and your grandma, because they're gonna love everything that you do.
Just listening to what you were saying, would you say that people caring about what you do matters more in if you're trying to entertain people versus if you're trying to help people solve their problems?
Probably in the case of entertainment, you need care more than in the case of solutions, unless you want to place your face and be known as the solution guy. Because if someone's in pain, right, they're much more interested in the solution rather than figuring out who they're talking to. They just want to hurry up and fix that. Whereas in the case of like being a brand or doing entertainment, at that point, you probably need to convert people to care a little more.
Yeah, and here's another kind of thing that will flip this all on its head to close this off. But I'd even argue, I guess, that you shouldn't care about people caring about you if you're trying to build a business. You should care about caring about people that you're trying to help.
Exactly. You should care about your customer.
Yes, like why should a customer care about me? I should be the one caring about customer, right? At the end of the day.
Exactly. That's a very valid point. Psychologically speaking, who do we like best? We like people that like us. I mean, aside from the people that are similar to us, if someone says, Yuri, I think you're great, I'd be like, oh, wow, thank you. I think you're great too.
Yeah, because I think like whether it's a blog where you're trying to educate somebody or entertain someone, or whether it's a restaurant that's trying to feed people on the highway, or whether it's a restaurant that's trying to provide the best the best hamburger in town, at the end of the day, it has to be the blog that cares about helping the reader. It has to be the restaurant that cares about feeding the people on the highway. It has to be the restaurant that cares about producing the best hamburger in town. And the customer is just consuming that. The customer is just consuming whatever it is that you provide. And only once you provide the good thing, then maybe the customer will care enough to return or to refer a friend. But I think at the very basic level, at first, it has to be you caring about the customer.
Yeah. Or let's bring it down to a side hustle level, not just, restaurants and corporations, but, if you're the artist and someone really likes your work, if you could send them a copy for free or something, that'll really make their day. That's another example. If you're putting out music and someone commented and just following all your stuff, then there's plenty of things you could do to connect with that person, make them, so valued. I wouldn't even want to call them a fan, but just to make them feel valued.
Yeah, and again, at the end of the day, I think if you think about it, then what does it mean when people care about you? When people care about your business, it means customer loyalty, right? And how many businesses there are really that have real loyal customer bases? I think they're like the vast minority of all the businesses that are out there.
Yeah.
So I think it's really hard to get customers to care about you, and it cannot be achieved without you first caring about the
Yeah.
customers.
But we're also kind of going in two different directions here. One is we're kind of on the topic of side hustles. It's always more personal because it's just like one person doing it versus we're giving like examples of corporate and restaurants and big businesses that are clearly not side hustles. I think it's much more important for a person that's doing a side hustle because like they're still on the ground, they're still involved in every single aspect of their project, and chances are it is their face on their project. So it essentially is them interacting and engaging with whoever is interested in their work.
Yeah, so I think it's definitely different to talk about, like, I'm looking at the Coca-Cola bottle on my table. So I think it's definitely different to talk about customer loyalty and stuff like that when it comes to Coca-Cola versus when it comes to your personal blog. But I think it's not too different comparing like a restaurant versus like a blog. At the end of the day, one of you is making hamburgers, the other one's making articles. And whoever comes to your restaurant or whoever comes to your blog, there's essentially two things they can do. One, they can come and solve their problem so they can stop being hungry, or they can get the information they need.
About their
Or
dog.
two is about their dog. Yeah. Shout out to the American Dog Owners Association. But so that's one thing. They can just go there and get their needs fulfilled, like whether it's they're hungry or whether it's that they need to solve some problem and they need information on how to solve the problem. Or they can go a step beyond that and they get to your restaurant, they eat your hamburger, and they even forgot that they were hungry before. They just are so amazed by the stuff that you gave them, by the service or by the food itself or whatever, that they just want to return there. Or they just read your article and they solve their problem, but they forget that they just solved their problem. They just go around and start looking around your blog and they start reading all your archives and they just become a fan. So I think it's really the same whether we're talking about restaurants or about blogs or about YouTube channels. And I think the core question is, do they return?
That's a good way to wrap up that part. I guess the next question is, Keishi, how did we get people to quote unquote care about our side hustles? I know both of us are very much in a similar position. We both run blogs. We both do affiliate marketing.
Yeah, so honestly, I think for for the affiliate marketing type of blogs that I run, I don't think people necessarily care. I think it just solves their problems, and I get paid in turn for that in affiliate revenue or in ad revenue. But to give you an example, like I run a tour to Iran for my for aviation enthusiasts, and I run one in February 2016 and another one in November. And essentially, the way I got people to care in November was that the February tour was really good, right? So to me, just providing good product, whether that's content, whether that's tour. And then if we're talking on kind of the more general level of how do we get people, then the vast majority of my people come from Google. So it's more an SEO, but I don't think that necessarily means people cares.
Yeah, let's take your aviation blog, for example, because the aviation tours, essentially you're getting strangers from the internet that read your blog and they end up flying over to a certain place to take part in this project that you set up. So that's a big deal.
Yeah, so there I think it just comes to reputation, and that reputation is just one way to build it is just to produce a lot of good content or to be published in magazines or whatever it might be, and then just combining that with a good offer.
But with the aviation blog, it is your face and name on there. So essentially you are a figure that they can look towards and read from and read about and enjoy your content rather than a nameless blog.
Oh yeah, it definitely helps. And I don't think I could like run a tour if I didn't put my name out there. I'm like, who would trust a company that nobody knows? Like,
Hey.
I think it's easier to trust the person you don't know rather than a company that you don't know.
Yeah, it's like,
Especially
hey, join me, an internet stranger on a flight to Iran. That sounds a little suspicious.
Not if you're an aviation enthusiast.
All right, but yeah, in the case of the other blogs where we get traffic from Google, I guess in that sense we have to reframe the meaning of care. And like in that sense, we're essentially doing SEO so people can find us for whatever solutions that they're looking for. Now, it's not that they're particularly caring about us. It's more so we're giving them value, whether they're looking for a flight review or an airport review, or if they're looking for language learning products. And then I guess the only way to make them care is by giving them essentially what they're looking for. So in those cases, it's just a matter of giving people value. That's one. The other point is like, you have to be found on Google. I've put in a lot of work towards making sure my articles are found on Google and they rank for it. So it's important to actually, because if no one finds your stuff, then no one's ever going to care in the first place. So that's a prerequisite.
So I think actually the reason I was kind of hesitant to talk about SEO in the first place, I just realized that ironically, even though it should be the readers that you're serving, I think if you want to build traffic from SEO, from search engines, then you actually have to get Google to care rather than your readers to care. And I don't think these two are necessarily always aligned.
Yeah. But the point is you still have to be found somewhere, right? Like if you're not found, if you essentially don't exist. And at that point, it's how do you make someone care, read your stuff if you simply can't be found at. So it's not, in that case, we're not really talking about caring. It's just that the prerequisite of caring is that you have to exist somewhere in the first place. You have to be out somewhere in the first place, whether it's on Google, YouTube, TikTok, or I don't know, Twitter.
Oh yeah, you definitely have to put some efforts into how do people even find me in the first place.
Yeah, I know that's not part of caring, but it's the prerequisite of the next step, which is being cared for or cared about.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because I think it's easy for the takeaway to be produce the best content ever, and people will care. But like you said, if you produce the best content ever, but then you don't care about how it appears in the search engines, or you don't care about promoting it on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, and nobody comes to your best content, then really, what's the point?
Yeah. So at least in the case of my blogs, that's how I build up an audience. And to make them care even further, I have a email opt-in list where if anyone's interested in learning more on, I don't know, language related stuff, they can sign up for my email lists and receive my emails. That's just a way to capture them and just have them for longer, have them care for longer, I guess you could say. Another example I have is like, I know I mentioned earlier, I have 2 Facebook pages with 20K likes that I don't really put too much work into, but one example is Best Japan Pictures. Basically what it was I would swipe pictures off of like Pinterest, and of course I would offer credit and say like, this picture comes from this link. And a lot of people, people like looking at pictures online, and pictures also get reshared. So that means you get more fans. So little by little, the page just grew simply by me putting out content. And I'm pretty sure it probably would have grown to a much bigger audience if I actively maintained it. But it also did grow with the help of, having a friend cross-promoted. And then that's how I got my second page up. I think it was like learn Japanese phrases every day. And I cross-promoted that on the Best Japan's picture and had that also grow to 20K likes. But in this case, it's not so much about friends or family caring. It's more about, putting out content and making it found and getting yourself exposed to other audiences and having them convert over to you, which is how I built up those Facebook pages.
Yeah, I guess just comes down to 2 key things. And one is like you're talking about just getting people to come to your site or to your Facebook page or to your YouTube channel or whatever it might be. And to do that, you need to just do essentially marketing at the end of the day, right? Yeah. Whether that's SEO or whether that's cross-promoting through your friend's Facebook page. And then the second part of it is just put out good stuff, put out good content, create good products, sell good products at a reasonable price, whatever that might be. And I think once you combine those two, you can build a really good side hustle or a business.
I know you have a YouTube channel, right?
I do. I put out like 3 videos and stuff. So
did you get any subscribers? I remember you posted up a few, I think it was like a year or 2 ago. And as usual, people, when you start something new or you announce something new on Facebook, they all press like, oh yeah, congrats, great job. I guess maybe that's like a slight example of like care, but then less so caring over a longer period of time.
Yeah, exactly. Like I wouldn't even call it care. I'd call it more curiosity with like a courtesy comment or courtesy like.
Yeah. So did you end up growing that channel?
No. The channel has like 3 videos or something.
Okay.
I just found it too difficult to create the videos, or it takes a lot of time, and I just decided to spend the time in other ways.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking of starting like a more business-oriented sort of YouTube channel. So once that is up, I'm sure we can cross-promote it here.
Yeah. Anytime. Will you be launching it anytime soon? Any ETA?
I hope so. I like the one of the first things that I want to talk about is like a case study of the authority site that I'm building right now. So I'm not going to be revealing the niche or the URL or anything, just like I haven't done here. But I'll be revealing all the detailed numbers about the revenues and the articles and the costs and stuff like that. So it should be interesting stuff.
If you're going to be putting out like how much you earn and how much work you put in, like essentially a case study, I think with the right audience will definitely care. If someone else is interested in building up an authority site or a website for affiliate marketing, they'll absolutely love this type of content.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the only reason I decided to do so is essentially because the thing that motivated me to build this thing and to build some of my other sites and so on have been similar case studies as well. So I think the more content like this is out there, the more people will at least give it a shot.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's also the purpose of why we're doing this podcast, right?
I thought we were doing this for fun.
Hey, we're doing it for fun, but I think if somebody's listening and if it helps even one person not even succeed with their side hustle, but even if it helps one person to just give it a shot, I think it's already worth it for me.
Yeah. So guys, if you find this helpful, please leave this podcast a review. And wherever you saw the link for this podcast, sometimes we post it up on Facebook to see if any of our friends care. For those of you that do, we thank you very much. For those of you that don't, it's all cool. We don't really care because, it's you can't really make anyone care for everything. We only have so much care in our day. But, if you do enjoy listening to this podcast, if you do get some value, please definitely leave a comment. We love hearing from you.
Absolutely. Just one closing thought.
Yeah.
Even if you feel like nobody cares, just keep going. And at the end of the day, somebody will care if your stuff is good enough and if you're promoting your content in a way that people see it.
Or at the very least, your mom will always care. And that's the most important part.
Or just send us the link and we'll care, even if for just 15 seconds.
Yeah. You know what? Here's an offer. We'll care so much, we'll shout it out in the next episode.
You know what's the ironic thing? This way people will know that nobody cares about us. If we don't do any shout outs.
Well, we can cut that out. we can always cut it out if we don't get any shout outs. Plus, at the same time, people don't pay attention that much. People don't care. People won't care, if we don't shout out someone because someone didn't get in contact with us. Because, the whole thing is with these side hustles is it doesn't matter what's going on right now. It's not going to matter what's going on in 2 years. What matters is like that you're consistent and persistent with it. And it's not about what's going on right now in the first month or in the second month of you doing it, because the real results come in like years later on.
Yeah, I think that's a great closing thought. Just be patient and be consistent. And if your stuff is good, people will care.
And if your stuff is bad, the good news is no one's going to care. And, you won't get the criticism that you expected to receive for it. Unless you're putting out something hateful. And then at that point, then, you kind of ask for it.
Exactly.
So guys, this has been the Side Hustles and Stuff podcast with Kei Shinyuri. If you want to get the notes for today's podcast, go to sidehustlesandstuff.com/E8. And if you are ready to start your own side hustle, definitely go to the notes where we have the link. We're promoting Bluehost. Basically, it's a hosting service where if you actually want to start your blog or website for your own project, if you want to start putting out your ideas into the world, visit the notes, check out Bluehost, set up your site, start publishing content, and finally make it a reality. It's as simple as that sometimes.
Yep.
So again, guys, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Talk to you in the next episode.
Do we have any bloopers for this?
I think there was like one or two.
Well, I just hit my... What is it called? What's it called? What is it? The pop filter. That's what it's called.
Did you say anything after again?
Wait, what did I say? And everyone has their own babies in a way, in one way or another. That's a good line. Boom. Something fell. Okay. Let me just finish eating this chip. So guys, this has been the Side Hustles and Stuff podcast with Kei Shinyuri.